So I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned before, and that was the artists experimenting with different sorts of music. And for example, someone that goes from pop to country. And I guess the devil's advocate to that position would be, so if you look at someone like Machine Gun Kelly, he had been known for rapping up until he was 28, 29 years old. He had rapped exclusively, kind of played around a little bit with pop and melodic. And then all of a sudden, he drops this pop punk album. Travis Barker's on it, Halsey's on it, Trippie Redd, and he has a lot of hip hop artists that normally stick to hip hop that are hopping on this alternative genre train. And he certainly, I saw a few articles here and there that said MGK abandoned hip hop. Not a lot though. And I also saw a lot of his fans, myself included, that will follow MGK's artistry and at least give it a chance in whatever form that it is. So if you apply that to content, I would say the thing that you may be losing, just from a outsider's perspective, because I've never created anything anonymously over a long-term period, I would think that something you may be losing is that people want to see people may want to listen to you regardless of what you make, or at least give it a chance where they see your face, they know who you are. And for example, if you switch to, a podcast on surfing, but it was hosted by uh, Jake, and they knew exactly who you were, they may be willing to give it a chance. And if it was good, they would start listening to that, since they maybe just like you as a person. So it's an interesting trade-off, because there are artists that create alter egos in a sense, like Porter Robinson has a couple. And then you look at MGK, who releases stuff just as MGK, even though it's totally different. So I'm not, I know there's a lot of gray area in that. It's interesting to see though, like which artists can do that successfully and not change, and then which artists create that alter ego because they feel like it doesn't fit in what they've already created for themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think a couple things that kind of stick out to me. One, to your point, it's while it may be hard to kind of transfer or transition your audience to a new aspect of what you're doing, to a new thing, a new genre or business or whatever it might be. It seems to me that it's probably harder to start it from scratch. So I think that's very much a fair point. But while it may not be as easy to kind of convert that audience, I think a well-known person might just enjoy, they might have plenty of money and plenty of notoriety from whatever they're doing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And they may be more interested in just being able to express themselves, and maybe 100 followers of their, pseudonymous country album is something that gives them as much kind of joy and appreciation as and like feeling of purpose or whatever it might be, as the million followers that they have on their rock and roll kind of brand. So it may, I do totally agree that it's probably, if you want to start a new whatever and have it be successful, and you're already successful in one avenue, building that trust is super important, and being able to kind of call on that trust to follow you to whatever you want to do next is an extremely valuable thing. I'm actually right now, I'm reading Bezos's his shareholder letters for
Mm-hmm.
Amazon shareholders from 1997 to modern day. I'm probably in like around 2005 right now or something like that. They're short and they're really good. I've never really read shareholder letters before this, but he talks about, they were selling books online. Like, never in a million years could you have kind of foreseen that an online bookstore, I mean, maybe he did, but the average person wouldn't expect that, like, oh, the biggest internet business in 2020, yeah, that'll be this this online bookstore for sure.
Yeah.
It's just like totally, that's a very specific thing. And to imagine what it's grown into is incredible. And the way that he's done that, or at least part of it, has been um, ever since the first shareholder letter, he talks about customer obsession, be like relentlessly obsessed with delighting the customer. And by doing that, he's built this trust in Amazon over time. And if you buy books from Amazon and they start offering CDs, you start buying CDs, and then
Hmm.
video games, and then electronics, and then you are a consumer and you're buying all of those goods from Amazon, and you see that now they have AWS, and you go and you use them for cloud services, and it's like you build that trust. It's really an invaluable thing to do, to build trust with a group of people and a growing group of people. And I don't see myself as not being able to do that just because I don't put my face and name on it.
Hmm.
I do agree it's maybe a little harder, and maybe it takes a little bit longer. People like to see a face
Hmm.
and they like to know a name. It just makes things more personable. But
Hmm.
I do see already, people seem to be putting a little bit more trust in me and a little bit more faith into whatever I'm doing, and are excited about, the next thing that I'm going to release. And even if they found me for, crypto type podcast guests, they might listen in when I talk about, when I have someone on the show who wants to talk about like reversing aging.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good point that you bring up. And I think trust is certainly something that I think a lot about.
Yeah, that brings up a good point, building the trust with your audience. And I was trying to think of a good way to bring this up, and I wanted to talk about accountability of content creators and what's the best way to be held accountable for the things that you say as an anonymous person on the internet. And you talk a lot about David Goggins, who's someone I also admire as well. And I read his book recently
He's a
too.
beast.
Yeah, absolute beast. And part of kind of what gets me off about his content is that it's him looking into the camera, running, lifting. You can see that he's doing the things that he talks about. And so I'm wondering for you, how do you view what would be the best way for your audience to hold you accountable? How do you think about the relationship between accountability and content as an anonymous creator, since you don't have your face?
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, I mean, I certainly want to be accountable, and maybe I should think about it a bit more explicitly. I guess I don't think about it too much because first and foremost, I view myself as being accountable to myself, and I have very high expectations, and higher than I think anyone would have of me, and so I don't worry too much about it. But perhaps it would be a useful exercise to think about that a little bit. I mean, one side of it is that I don't want to say something that doesn't represent me, and if I do, and that's kind of easy to do. It wouldn't seem, it seems like, oh yeah, it's like, that's easy. Just like don't say anything that like you don't mean. But like people do this all the time, right? Like you have,
Hmm.
and I have, group chats and text messages with friends, and there's certain jokes and like um whatever that's like you don't mean it and everyone gets it, and the part of the thing
Yeah.
is everyone knows who everyone is uh deep down, and that so you have more flexibility to say things, and it's just maybe that's just what we are as humans, or maybe I'm like a bad guy, but I think
Yeah.
I'm a pretty good person, and I've made jokes that I wouldn't want a billion people to see, and I don't
Yeah.
people are probably going
And
to run with that in their imagination and make it a lot worse than it is. I'm not talking about like really really ugly stuff here,
well, yeah,
but
those jokes can be taken 1,000 different ways too. Ten people can hear the same joke and they'll take it in 10 different ways in terms of where they are on, oh, that was a hilarious joke and I love it, or this is the most offensive thing that I've ever heard. There will be 10 different spots on that spectrum if you tell the same joke to 10 different people. So yeah, it's a tough thing to navigate with content when you're thinking about how people are going to take it. For me, what helps me is I try to release the best piece of content possible, and whatever that means for me in a podcast or maybe a blog post, something like that. And then once it's to the level that I want to release, however people take it, however people want to interpret it is totally okay and totally up to them on that spectrum.